Welcome to the ODDSBREAKER'S number one place for shared, sharp betting information.
All right, welcome back to podcast 22 of 2020. I'm your host, Kiev O'Neill. You can follow us on social media / the ODDSBREAKERS. Follow us on Twitter at the ODDSBREAKERS. This episode is being brought to you by BetOnline.ag for a sign-up bonus of 50%. Please visit theoddsbreakers.com/betonline. Click the banner. Terms and conditions and location apply. If you'd like to help us out with our cost, sponsor the podcast and the website, we'd love to help you out. Please visit theoddsbreakers.com, click shop, and become a member. For $17.99 a month, you can get my plays and premium plays before the line moves. If you'd like to make a donation through Patreon, we also have that option available. And if nothing else, please visit theoddsbreakers.com and become a free picks newsletter subscriber. It's NFL draft week, my friends. And some things have changed and some things haven't. The plan is to have 2 podcasts this week. Hoping to drop one Wednesday night / Thursday morning before the draft when a bunch more information comes in. So we might have some more accurate information to make better plays or more plays. Today, I'm going solo just because it's still early. Some lines have moved, but I also found a couple more plays that I like and I would like to share with you. Before we get into that, I'd like to talk about this virus situation that we are all enduring right now. I actually think that there will be a baseball season. I think there will be an NFL, and I think there will be a college football season. Now, I'm not sure if they're going to have fans or not in the stadium. I'm thinking baseball, mostly not. I'm thinking there's probably a 50% chance that football will have some fans. But in my opinion, it's going to blow over a little bit this summer. And to be honest with you, obviously I'm not a doctor. I'm not. I have no business probably giving you any thoughts on what this virus is going to do. But at the same time, many doctors don't agree what's going to happen because they don't know for sure either. So if they knew for sure, then I probably wouldn't say anything. But, as you know, I'm a betting man. And I think when I try to look at past things about viruses, how they eventually go away, and how there's some evidence out there that some things are being done incorrectly, I can form an opinion. I'm more in the middle about what to do here, to be honest. There's a lot of fighting going on social media, as usual. I mean, the virus has been politicized. It seems like one side wants to go back to work and one side wants to stay quarantined for a long time. It's just amazing how that happens. But I'm a little bit in the middle of that too. And there's people on the extreme that just don't believe that the virus is killing anybody. There's people that think that it's just made up to ruin us all. It's a big conspiracy. That's the far end of the spectrum. And then on the other side, there's people that think that we should never shake hands again. We should be quarantined until there's a vaccine, even though if it takes years. I mean, there's that far other side right now. I mean, there's people that saying that if you go out and decide to break the rules, you should sign a waiver that you can't get medical treatment. There's people on the other side that say that the repercussions of staying in economically is going to ruin the earth a lot more than the virus will, or ruin people, depression, things like that. I think staying home was the right thing, at least for a while. And I think it still is the right thing for a little bit longer. But I also think that it does have to end because the virus isn't killing people at as high of a rate as being reported. There's just a study done. A few studies have been done, actually, but one in particular in Los Angeles County that they were able to confirm results through antibody testing. They did a study between April 10th to April 14th, a random sample of 860 people were tested for antibodies, and 4% of them came back positive. So if that sample is statistically significant, they can use that to say that there was a heck of a lot more people out there in Los Angeles that have had the COVID-19 virus. And if they use their margin of error for false negatives and false positives, it's 2.8% of people to 5.6% of people in LA County have had the coronavirus. So that means anywhere between 221,000 and 442,000 adults may have been infected. Okay, so that's way more than the 8,000 that's been reported. So, I mean, if that's the case, then at least the death rate is finally down to closer to the flu. Still higher. I think it's like 0.14% when the flu's death rate is 0.1% or less. But it also says that, if only, 2 to 5% of people were infected, there's still a lot more infections that can happen. So that's some good news, and it's kind of something I've been thinking for a while, that actually this virus has been around a little bit longer, and people have actually had it without knowing it. Plus, there's just a lot of people that don't have symptoms. They are asymptomatic. So, in my opinion, we all should still quarantine to protect people that are vulnerable to this disease. And this disease is bad. It kills people in their 30s and 40s too, just at a much lower rate. But you see that if their bodies can't fight off the pneumonia, it gets worse and worse. And so, in my opinion, this is worse than the flu. But because of it, you should still remain quarantined for a little longer. I would say another couple weeks. Maybe May 1st is a date, maybe the first week in May. And then after that, you should go by age, in my opinion. So I think at least that way you can start the economy up. Restaurants can reopen again. That more and more large businesses are going to be going out of business if this doesn't happen, which would really tank the economy, which means quarantining really doesn't do anything because there's going to be some mass hysteria out there. So in my opinion, I'm kind of in the middle. I say this is still a very dangerous thing, but if you continue to shut down society and the economy for too long, everything's going to go bad, and everybody is going to lose what they work so hard for their whole lives. All right, going back to sports. One thing I will say is, and I touched about this last week, about how important returning production is. It's more important now because of the lack of practices that these teams have been able to have. There's been no OTAs in football, where there's not going to be any time soon for the NFL. There's no spring practices for college. So if you have new quarterbacks coming in especially, or if you have a new coach coming in, I think it's going to affect these teams more, especially in the beginning. That is a bad thing for them. And so we're going to have to adjust the way that we handicap these games when they eventually do start. And in my opinion, you really have to, I mean, you really have to see a huge change in the line in order to bet on a new coach or a team with a new quarterback coming in. As a matter of fact, there might be a ton of value, especially early on those teams that at least return what they had last year. So just some thoughts on that. If you have any thoughts on that, please feel free to tweet us at the Odds Breakers. All right, let's get into some more NFL draft information and plays. And our affiliate betonline.ag has some more prop bets out. Haven't got a chance to dive too much into them. By our next show, Wednesday night, Thursday morning, we're going to probably go over every single one again. And I'm going to recap every single play we made from all the shows of the NFL draft before. So don't worry about that. But I want to get into some of these. Will the teams draft an offensive player or a defensive player first? Okay. Now, I have a couple plays on this. But the problem with it is that the offensive player is more obvious in some situations here. Okay? Because if a team's going for a quarterback like Cincinnati, it's going to be a major minus 1,000 type situation. You know, as a matter of fact, the Cincinnati Bengals drafting an offensive or defensive player isn't even on the board because it's so obvious that they're going to go for Joe Burrow. And if they didn't, it'd be such a big plus money, it would really hurt the books because there would probably be some people taking a shot at the plus 2,000 type deal. But teams like the Miami Dolphins that are supposedly going to pick Justin Herbert or Tua, they're at minus 1,000 here. The LA Chargers, they need some offense. They just lost their quarterback. They're saying they might be trading up for Tua now, which is very possible. And if not, maybe they get Justin Herbert and trade up for him. Minus 600. So there's not like any secrets when it comes to the teams that need quarterbacks, right? It's the teams that you can't really tell what they're going to do is what you want to key in a little bit more on. And usually you want to go towards the defensive player. You know, there's teams that are poised to pick wide receivers, like the Denver Broncos. Their offensive player is minus 360. But it goes against my whole narrative of why the heck would you pick a wide receiver if there's so many of them out there and they don't move the needle usually for teams. Also, there's no one that really stuck out. I mean, the speed guy wasn't even the number one guy coming out. He's projected at number 3. Most of them ran under 4.40s. You know, like 4.5s, 4.46s. Some of them didn't even run it just because they knew they were slow. I personally don't think there's anyone that sticks out too much in this draft besides Mims. So, you know, in my opinion, Denver might be making a mistake, but there's so many reports that they're going to go after Jetty or something like that and possibly even trade up for them. I have to believe some of those reports because they come from people in Colorado and people that know the team and John Elway really well. So, you know, Denver picking an offensive player makes sense. They've been going a lot of defense over the years, and they want to protect their quarterback in Drew Lock. You know, they're giving him a shot. So there's a chance they would go offensive line. Plus, they lost Emmanuel Sanders. So it makes a little bit more sense to them. I wouldn't do it, but the reports are coming out, and I have to sometimes go with that. The interesting thing to me is when you look at defense, sometimes there's some really obvious things that you can base your play on. You can look at what this team really needed from the year before. You know, you can see that their defense gave up a ton of yards, but tons of yards per game. You can see that their defense gave up a ton of passing yards per game or rushing yards per game. Okay? You can see that. Numbers are right there for you. You can also see if they hurried the quarterback or if they had a decent number of sacks per game. On the offensive side, it's a little bit harder to see that. It's hard to judge an offensive line over a running back. It's a little bit. Sometimes it's the offensive line that sucked. Sometimes it's the running back that sucked. It's a little bit harder to quantify that. You know it when a defensive line isn't good. The linebackers aren't getting there. And the running backs are getting 4 to 5 yards per carry. You know that. You know when the secondary is not good because if your sack rate is okay and they're still throwing a ton of yards on you, that's a problem. As a matter of fact, that's a serious secondary problem. And you can see if they're actually trying to get some interceptions, if they're turning the ball over. Defense is very quantifiable. You can actually get the numbers almost exactly right to see where your deficiencies are. Offense is a little bit more complex, but when things stick out, that's when I want to bet that a team is going to get a defensive player. Now, I think that there's some teams that were an absolute shit show on both sides of the ball, and that's Miami. Now, Miami got better towards the end of the season. Remember, they did beat the Patriots their final game, but they were also last in sacks per game, 6th to last in opponent passing yards per game, and 3rd to last in yards per game. Terrible on defense, but they're also terrible on offense, and they're trying to start their franchise with the quarterback. They also signed a lot of people on defense, so that's one team that I probably can't make a defensive play on. I look at Detroit. Detroit's picking 3rd in the draft. Right? People say that they're going to go for Okudah. Very possible. I kind of think that too. But obviously Simmons is right there too. Their defense was terrible last year. They're 2nd in yards per game, allowing 400.4. In passing yards per game, they were last, 284.4. And in sacks per game, they're 3rd to last at 1.8. They're going defense, but they're minus 600. So that's one I have to stay away from. Let's look at the next team, which is the most intriguing to me. The Tampa Bay Buccaneers. They gave up 270.1 passing yards per game. 3rd worst in all of the NFL. But they're actually pretty good against the run. Because they were only right in the middle at 15th for total yards per game at 343.9. They're also pretty good at sacking the quarterback, ranking 8th in the nation at 2.9 sacks per game. This screams this team needs to go defense, right? Defensive backs, secondary, cornerbacks, and safeties. They're getting the quarterback. They're stuffing the run. They were signed their guys up front. They got their quarterback now that doesn't throw a picks with Tom Brady, right? But they have, all the mock drafts have them going offensive line. Literally, offensive line. Almost all of them.
Come on, don't bullshit me.
Seriously. And I just don't understand it. I don't understand why that is. It makes no sense to me. And I know they want to protect Brady, but he's only got a couple of years left. I mean, they're more borrowing Brady for a couple of years, right? Tampa Bay picks number 14th in their Andrew Thomas tackle. Tampa Bay lost Dotson at right tackle, but they just signed Joe Haig from Indianapolis for like $3.5 million to replace him. They have the rest of their line intact. You look at BetOnline, Tampa Bay to pick a defensive player first is plus 250. And to pick an offensive player is minus 400. That's all sure that they're going offensive line. But it makes absolutely no sense to me. Because as good as Tom Brady is, if their secondary can't cover anybody, they're going to get burned and give up a ton of points anyway. The best thing they could do is trade down, in my opinion, get a corner or a safety, whatever the best one is there. Then maybe for your one of your second round picks or third round pick that you get, you're going to get two of at 14th. If you trade down 10 spots, you're probably going to pick up a third round pick. Okay? So for your second round pick, maybe you get that tackle that you want or another corner or safety. And your third round, same deal. It makes absolutely no sense to me for this team to go offensive line right now. You look at Pro Football Focus. They rank the offensive lines from last year. You know where Tampa ranks? They rank 7th in the nation.
Unreal.
Why the heck are they going offensive line when their glaring weakness was secondary? So that drives me nuts a little bit. And I had to make a play at the plus 250 because even though all the mock drafts say offensive line, it's just hard for me to believe that. Now, I'm going to only do a half star on it because of all those mock drafts, but I'll take that plus 250 and be happy with it if it comes through, because if any team should be picking a secondary or defense in this situation that they're in, well, besides Detroit Lions, it should be them. Another team that I think is going defense is the Houston Texans. First pick defensive player. Okay. The Houston Texans were 4th worst in opponent passing yards per game at 269, if you remember. That was their big weakness, was giving up passing yards. Houston's sack rate was pretty bad too. 1.9 per game, 27th in the NFL, or 6th worst. So they at least were bad a little bit on both sides when Tampa just really needs secondary. Houston could get an edge rusher, a defense tackle, linebacker, or secondary, in my opinion, because they also gave up the 5th worst, 393 total yards per game. So I think they're going defense. And the reason that is, I know they lost DeAndre Hopkins, but they got a running back. And then they picked up Brandon Cooks. And then they picked up Randall Cobb at wide receivers. So they're kind of clear there. They also have a pretty beefed up offensive line. Remember, they picked up Laramie Tunsil from Miami last year. You know? So they're pretty set now for that. Now, do I think they downgraded at wide receiver and I think this trade was stupid? Absolutely. But at the same time, this team's going to have to fix their secondary or their pass rush. And all the mock drafts out there, all the main ones, have them going after AJ Espinosa for their first pick. Now, it's not going to be day 1 because they don't have a first-round pick. It's going to be day 2, so you have to wait till Friday for this bet to cash. It's minus 145. In my opinion, this should be minus 300. Okay? So I found some value at the minus 145, and I put 2 stars on that. That way you're going to make some money even if the Tampa one doesn't come through. You know, the mock drafts have them going edge rusher, because J.J. Watt, he's getting older, and he can't stay healthy. As much as I love the former Badger, he can't get the game 14, 15, and stay on the field. And they also lost Jadeveon Clowney, if you remember. That's why their pass rush was so bad last year. So I think it's a no-brainer for the Texans to go defense with their first pick, which is 40th, and their second round. That's why I'm putting 2 stars on this play, and it is a premium shared play.
And so then I got a call from him saying we don't have to worry about money no more. And I said, that's good. One less thing.
There's one more play that we made for our premium subscribers here, and another pretty obvious one that's going defense. But I hope from this podcast that you kind of got the methodology that I use for deciding if a team should be taking offense or defense, what the mock drafts are saying, and obviously how to find that information and deciding for yourself. That's all the time we have for this podcast. We'll, like I said, have 2 this week. Have a great rest of your week. Be watching for some plays on our free picks newsletter, and go get some winners.